Lily sat at the edge of her bed in a dimly lit room, her heart racing as she clutched her phone. She had received a message from Jake, the man she had trusted completely, a man she'd loved deeply. Slowly, she opened the text. "I'm sorry," it read. Lily's mind raced back to the last time she had spoken to him, the night everything fell apart. Her heartache was still fresh. The memory of Jake's angry words echoed in her mind like a haunting song, but part of her still yearned for closure, for answers. So she replied, "All right, meet me at the park in an hour," he wrote back. The sun hung low in the sky as she made her way to the park, her stomach knotting with anxiety. Each step felt heavy with uncertainty, as if the very ground beneath her was warning her to turn back, but a glimmer of hope flickered inside her. Maybe this would be the closure she needed. When she arrived, Jake was already there, leaning against a tree. His hands were shoved deep into his pockets and his head hung low. He looked up when he heard her footsteps, and for a moment their eyes met, and in that instant she saw a mix of regret and longing. "Hey," she said softly, trying to steady her voice. "Hey," he replied, his voice barely above a whisper. He took a deep breath and straightened up. "I've been thinking about everything." Lily felt her heart clench. It had been a month since the fight, a month since he had pushed her away in a way she never expected. She asked, her voice shaking, "I do. I'm sorry for how things went down. I was scared and I didn't handle it well. The conviction in his eyes gave her a flicker of hope, even though a part of her wanted to shut him out completely. "Then what was it about? You shut me out." Anger bubbled up inside her, but she kept her voice steady. Jake shifted uncomfortably, looking away momentarily. "I thought I was protecting you, I thought." Tears threatened to spill as frustration mixed with sadness. It was heartbreaking to hear his explanation, and yet she wanted to believe things could change. "I know," he said, his voice breaking slightly, "and I regret it every day." He crossed her arms tightly, needing a barrier, a shield to guard her heart. "I'll prove it to you." As he spoke, she noticed his hands. They were rough, and his fingers had calluses from hard work, but then she caught a glimpse of something inked on his wrist. She asked, pointing. Jake hesitated, pulling his sleeve down slightly. "Nothing, it is," he replied, his voice flat. Lily's curiosity piqued. He shifted again, clearly uncomfortable in this moment. "Just a reminder," he muttered. Eyed running a hand through his hair, seemingly overwhelmed. Her intuition kicked in. "Is this why you pushed me away?" He nodded slowly, biting his lip. "Yeah." The questions poured out of her, urgency rising in her chest. He sighed heavily, brushing the back of his neck with his hand as if to gather his thoughts. "When I was younger, I made a lot of reckless decisions. That tattoo." Lily's heart softened slightly. Jake took a deep breath, the bravery in his eyes slipping away. They didn't make it. "I've always felt responsible, like I should have done more to save them. Ever since, I've tried to avoid getting close to anyone." A silence fell between them, heavy yet fragile. It was strange, recognizing the way fear could shape someone's actions. Her anger began to dissolve as compassion swept in. Lily asked gently. "Yeah," he admitted, his voice barely audibly, but it didn't. Lily considered this. It was hard to digest, hard to forgive. But she could see the weight of his regret, the sincerity behind his words. "I wish I had a perfect answer," he said, looking defeated. "I just need time to make it right." Lily studied him. She wanted to believe in his desire for growth, but trust was a fragile thing. A jumbled mix of emotions washed over her as she read the words. She asked quietly. "Yeah," he said softly. "In the end, we don't get a second chance." Lily felt a lump in her throat. This man in front of her was no longer just Jake, her ex. He was Jake, a man shaped by loss, driven by guilt, and they both stood on the edge of a crucial choice. "I have to be honest, Jake." "Then let me earn that trust," he said, his voice steady but vulnerable. "One moment at a time." All Lily could do was nod, her emotions swirling like a storm in her heart. There was a possibility here, glimmering in the distance like sunlight breaking through a heavy cloud, yet fear clung to her. How could she embrace it without falling back to hurt? "I want this to be different," she whispered, not quite finding her voice. "Then let's take it slow. Maybe we start by going out for coffee." "Okay," she replied, heart pounding with that flicker of hope again. "Sure," she said, her stomach knotted in anticipation. They stood there in the fading light, the silence stretching between them. She knew this wouldn't be easy, but as she looked at Jake's hopeful face, she couldn't help but think that maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. This time they could both learn to heal. "See you tomorrow then," she said, turning to leave. "Lily," he called after her. She turned back to see him searching for the right words, an unsteady heart on display. "I'll do whatever it takes to show you I mean it," he promised. With that, Lily walked away, a mix of emotions swirling inside her. Hope hung in the air, weighted with uncertainty. She knew this journey wouldn't be straightforward, but in that moment, she decided to give destiny a chance to explore the possibility of healing. Behind her, Jake stood watching, hands still in his pockets, tattoo exposed to the world, a reminder of his past and his determination for a brighter tomorrow. Would they find their way back to each other? Only time would tell. He stood outside her apartment building, rain pouring down in heavy sheets, head bowed and soaked to the bone. His heart thudded loudly in his chest. Jake had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times, yet here he was, nerves twisting his stomach like a tight knot. He raised his hand to knock, but hesitated. Would she even want to see him? His breath came out in heavy puffs, mixing with the misty air. Then he envisioned Lily's face, the way her bright eyes would sparkle when she smiled. The thought gave him the courage to bring his hand up once more. Just as he was about to knock, the door swung open, and there she was, looking both startled and weary, just like him. She asked, her voice a quiet blend of curiosity and frustration. The moment hung between them, thick with unspoken apologies. "I came to talk," he said, feeling the weight of his words. She echoed, stepping back to let him inside. Cold air rushed past him. The warmth of her home contrasted sharply with the chill he felt on the outside. Silence settled heavily in the small living room, punctuated only by the sound of rain against the window. Lily crossed her arms, guarding herself, and Jake felt like a thief in her space, but he took a breath and pressed on. "I've been thinking about everything," she shot back, her tone biting. "You didn't seem to think much when you pushed me away." His heart ached at the memory. "I know I messed up, I hurt you." Jake's words were heavy with sincerity. I didn't handle things well." She looked into his eyes, searching for something, hope perhaps. The weight of that question stung. Why now? He could hardly bear the truth. It was fear that had kept him away, fear that had tangled his thoughts like the rain outside. "I've been thinking about why I really did what I did." Her eyes narrowed slightly. He straightened, feeling the urgency of the moment. "I was scared, Lily, scared of getting hurt, scared of hurting you. But I also realized that in trying to protect you, I only pushed you away further." Silence lingered like a distant storm, shadows playing on the walls. Then she took a step forward, vulnerability piercing through her defenses. "Do you mean it, Jake?" "I promise," he said, his voice steady. "I've thought about what you mean to me every single day since we broke apart. I want you back." A flicker of something passed over her face, a glimmer of hope, but it was quickly followed by doubt. "It won't be easy, you know." "I know," he responded, urgency threading through his words. Once again, silence filled the room, and Jake watched as Lily's eyes darted away, as if fighting a tempest of emotions. Part of him wanted to bridge that gap, to hold her and make her feel safe again. He stepped closer, just enough to let her know he was there, but she flinched slightly, a reminder that the wounds from their past were still raw. She asked, almost a whisper now. Something inside Jake stirred, igniting memories of moments they shared, the laughter, the quiet nights filled with endless conversation. "If you give me a chance, I'll show you how much I care. Let me take you out tomorrow. Coffee." She started, uncertainty lacing her words. "Please," he pleaded, feeling the weight of hope hanging in the air. "Let me prove that I've changed." Finally, she took a breath, softening just a fraction. "All right, I won't," he assured her, voice firm. As she nodded, relief washed over him, mixing with the tension still hanging in the air. Touching the back of her neck, she looked away, reluctantly allowing a small smile to break through. "Fine, great," he replied, a surge of excitement bubbling up inside him. But as they stood there, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was still off. It nagged at him like a whisper in the dark. The next day arrived, and the sun peered through the clouds as Jake waited outside the cafe, nerves buzzing in his chest. The door swung open, and Lily walked in. She looked radiant with her hair catching the light, but as their eyes met, a shadow lurked behind her features. "Hey," she said, her voice warm but cautious. He replied, his heart racing. "You look still figuring out how to trust you," she interjected, cutting him off. He chuckled nervously, a sense of irony bubbling to the surface. As they settled into a booth, they sipped their coffee, small talk swirling between them like leaves on wind. But underlying their laughter was a tension, words left unspoken, feelings fluctuating just like the weather. Jake finally broke the silence. "Sure," Lily replied, sipping her drink. He pointed to the delicate piece of jewelry wrapped around her wrist, an encapsulation of memories. Her fingers brushed against it as she looked down. "Because it reminds me of you, of us." A lump formed in his throat, the weight of her words crashing over him like a tidal wave. He had taken those good times for granted, and now, she said it with resolve, but he could see the brittle edges of her heart still trying to protect itself. There it was again, the scar of their past. "I won't ask you to forget, I just want a chance," he replied, desperation in his voice. Lily watched him intently, searching for sincerity in his eyes. But how? He glanced at her wrist again, at the bracelet that had woven their love story together. "What if?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. He rolled up his sleeve to reveal a tattoo inked across his arm. "I got this a while back." Her eyes widened as she traced the letters with her gaze. "But I know it doesn't count for much right now," he interrupted gently. "But I want you to know that it's not just a tattoo, it's a promise to myself. I don't want to live in fear anymore. I want to embrace every moment, every relationship." Lily remained silent, absorbing his words. Seconds turned into an eternity, and all he could hear was the gentle thrum of the cafe around them. He could feel her eyes on him, searching for the truth hidden behind his confession. She finally asked, her voice softer now. He shifted, the memories washing over him. "I lost someone close to me. He made poor choices, dangerous ones, and I was too scared to intervene. While I was playing it safe, he paid the price. And since then, I've been terrified of facing my fears." Biting her lip, Lily looked down thoughtfully. "I do," he admitted, watching her eyes sparkle with understanding. As her gaze shifted back to the tattoo, he could see her processing it all. "It's deep," she finally said, surprising him. Yeah, it is, he replied, but getting this inked was my way of promising to live fully and to not let fear shackle me, and I want to do that with you. The tension broke, and for the first time that day, something shifted in the air. I don't want to be a prisoner of my fears either, she confessed, pushing her hair back behind her ear. So, can we try? Lily met his gaze, searching for something in his eyes. Then she leaned back slightly, letting out a breath. I need some time. Trust is built over moments, not just words, she said, her resolve strengthening. Of course, Jake replied, gratitude surging inside him. Let's take our time. Even as they finished their drinks, a newfound warmth began to blossom between them, a flicker of hope like the sun breaking through the clouds after a storm. Time would be their ally, balancing past mistakes with present possibilities. Jake knew the road ahead was far from easy, but as he looked at Lily, something deep within him stirred, a conviction that this could be the turning point, that they were stepping into a brighter future together, shoulder to shoulder. All it took was a little faith, a little courage, and a promise to heal. It was a stormy evening when Mia heard the urgent knock on her door. The sound echoed in the quiet apartment, startling her from her thoughts. She hesitated, heart racing. Just a few nights ago, she had ended things with Jake. The fight had been brutal, words exchanged like daggers, cutting deep and leaving scar tissue that ached in the silence of her empty home. With a shaky breath, she opened the door to find him standing there, drenched, his hair plastered to his forehead, eyes wide with something. Was it desperation? Mia, he started, his voice cracking as he stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. The warmth from her home contrasted sharply with the chill that surrounded him. She replied, pulling her arms around her body, feeling exposed. About us, he said, taking a step closer, but the distance between them felt like a chasm. Mia wanted to look away, to scream, to tell him to leave, but she was trapped in the depths of his gaze, tangled in the remnants of their memories. There's nothing to talk about, she said, her voice trembling. Yes, there is. The urgency in his tone tugged at her heart. Mia bit the inside of her cheek, stepping aside. Fine. Jake ran a hand through his hair, shaking off droplets of rain. I'm sorry for what happened. Her anger flared instinctively. You put me in that position because you chose to stop fighting. He flinched, the pain of those words landing like punches. I know, he said, taking a steadying breath. And I know that saying I'm sorry isn't enough. Mia crossed her arms tighter, a wall against the torrent of emotions swirling between them. Why, that's part of it, but it's more complicated than just fear, he insisted. A flicker of vulnerability crossed his face. When I was a kid, I lost my best friend. We were inseparable, like brothers. He made choices that led him down a dark path. I didn't see the danger until it was too late. His choices. Mia felt the anger deflate, replaced by empathy. I'm sorry for your loss, Jake. Her voice shook as she searched for the right words. I realize that now, he replied, desperation etched across his features. I thought that if I pulled away, I could shield you from the pain, but in doing that, I just pushed you away. The rain hammered against the windows like a frantic heartbeat, mirroring the chaos inside her. She asked, every ounce of her frustration resurfacing. I want to show you that I mean it, he said, his voice pleading. Let me prove to you that I'm not that scared kid anymore. Just as she opened her mouth to respond, something caught her eye. A glimmer as he reached for her hand, rolling back his sleeve slightly, revealing inked words wrapped around his wrist. Mia asked, pointing. Jake hesitated, suddenly withdrawn. Nothing, it looks like a tattoo, she pressed, leaning in closer. It is, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. He hesitated, looking conflicted. It's a reminder. The room felt heavy with silence, and Jake's vulnerability echoed in her chest. He looked down at the ink, visibly wrestling with his past. After I lost my friend, I realized how fragile life can be. I didn't want to go through life afraid to connect with people. I got this as a way to remind myself to take risks. Mia, he went on, his voice thick with emotion. I never wanted to hurt you. I wanted to protect you. Her heart ached at the sight of him, but there was still a wall between them, built up by broken trust and promises left unfulfilled. I know, he replied, eyes pleading. Just give me a chance to mend what I broke. I want to show you that I can be better. Mia felt tears threaten to spill. Somehow, even with the hurt he had caused, she could see it, an inkling of the Jake she had once loved. You have to understand, I'm scared too. I won't let that happen, he vowed, his voice steady, filled with an urgency that felt palpable. I swear I am different now. I want to face my fears, whether they're my past or the fear of losing you. He stepped closer, and in that moment the distance between them felt smaller. But the pain of their past still loomed large in the room, heavy like the storm outside. I don't know if I can just forget, she said, biting her lip. I know, he replied softly, running a hand through his hair. But just as I've learned to confront my fears, I want to work through ours together. The sincerity in his voice cracked the wall around her heart ever so slightly. You are, Jake said without hesitation. Strength isn't just about not feeling pain, it's about facing it head on. Slowly she nodded, feeling a warmth of hope flicker inside her. Okay, but we have to take it slow. Absolutely, he agreed, a look of relief washing over him. I'll do anything it takes. For a heartbeat, they stood in that small living room, the storm raging outside fading into the background as they found solace in one another's presence. A glimmer of trust began to rekindle, but Mia knew it wasn't the end of their journey, merely the beginning of rebuilding what had been lost. "Let me make you dinner tomorrow," Jake suggested, a hint of excitement breaking through the tension. She chuckled at his boyish grin, the lightness slowly filtering back into her heart. Jake laughed, a sound so pure it made her heart flutter. As they exchanged smiles, the storm clouds outside began to part, revealing the promise of a new day. It wouldn't be easy, but Mia felt a flicker of warmth grow between them, a fragile thread that connected their past to their present. The next evening arrived quietly. Mia found herself nervously fixing her hair while glancing at the clock. Would he really show up? As if answering her unspoken question, there was a knock on the door. Her heart raced. When she opened it, Jake was there, a bouquet of flowers in one hand and the other holding a small bag of groceries. "Sorry if I'm early," he said, a grin plastered across his face. "Surprise indeed," she replied, stepping aside to let him in. The aroma of something delicious wafted from the bag and her stomach rumbled in response. "I hope you like pasta," he said, pulling out ingredients and making himself at home in her kitchen. Mia watched as he prepared the meal, the tension from their previous conversation easing into easy laughter. The way he moved, the concentration on his face, it all felt so right. Maybe they could overcome this together. "Don't even think about burning the water," she teased, stealing a glance at him. "Please, I'm a cooking genius," he shot back, winking as he stirred a pot. Dinner flowed seamlessly, and as they sat at the table, candles flickering between them, a sense of intimacy began to bloom. They shared stories, laughter echoing through the small apartment, wrapping around them like a warm blanket. Jake asked suddenly, his tone shifting. She looked at him curiously. He rolled up his sleeve again, revealing the tattoo on his wrist. Mia's heart softened as she examined it closely. "Live for today," she read aloud, a sense of understanding wrapping around them like an embrace. "Yes, every day is a new choice. I want to choose you." Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes. "I want you to know that I'm serious about this," he said, his voice thick with emotion. They locked eyes, and in that moment doubts began to fade. The past was still there, looming like a shadow, but there was a glimmer of hope in the air. They could forge a different path, taking it one step at a time. After dinner, they moved to the living room. Jake grinned as he picked up a board game, a playful light in his eyes. "Let's end the night with some competition." Mia laughed, a sound so bright that it filled the room. As the night wore on, with laughter and playful banter echoing around them, she felt a sense of warmth settling inside her. The storm outside had long passed, but the clouds had given way to something more beautiful, a chance for a brighter tomorrow. Maybe, just maybe, they could weather whatever storms lay ahead together, hand in hand, forging a path of healing. The tattoo on Jake's wrist lingered in her mind, a symbol of their renewed promise. Life was too precious to be wasted on fear, and as they played, she realized for the first time in a long while that she was learning to trust again. The flickering candlelight illuminated their smiles, hope spilling into every corner of the room. Their hearts were beginning to reconnect, piecing together what had been broken. With courage, time, and newfound understanding, they stepped toward the possibility of love once more. It was a whirlwind of emotions that crashed down around her when Sarah saw him again. Rain pelted the sidewalk, pooling in small puddles that mirrored the turmoil inside her. She was looking down, lost in her thoughts, when she heard a familiar voice cut through the sound of falling drops. Her heart raced at the sound. Instinctively, she turned, and there he was, Tom, soaking wet, standing just a few feet away, looking both desperate and hopeful. It had been months since their fight, that explosive argument that had turned their world upside down. She asked, trying to keep her voice steady as she felt the old wounds start to surface. "I want to talk," he said, taking a step closer. The rain dripped down his face, but his eyes were steady, filled with sincerity. She repeated incredulously. After everything, he took a deep breath, his expression shifting to one of regret. "I know I hurt you." Frustration bubbled inside her. "You hurt me deeply, Tom. I never expected you to," he replied, genuine concern etched on his face. As rain continued to fall, they stood wrapped in a tense silence. Every moment felt charged, like lightning waiting to strike. "You lied to me," Sarah finally said, her voice wavering. "I know, I broke those promises. I was scared, and I pushed you away instead of letting you in," he admitted, voice cracking slightly. "I didn't know how to handle what I was feeling. I thought I was protecting you. I can't deal with this right now," she said, her heart racing. "Please just hear me out," he pressed, stepping forward again, desperate to bridge the gap. "I didn't want to let you go. I realize now how much I care about you." The rain continued to pour around them, a reflection of the tumultuous feelings swirling inside Sarah. She challenged, crossing her arms defensively. "Look, I didn't come here empty-handed," Tom said, his voice firm, as he rolled up his sleeve to reveal a tattoo on his wrist. He asked, eyes drawn to the ink as the rain blurred their surroundings. "It's a reminder," he replied, his voice softer now. Sarah studied it closely, a series of intricate letters woven together, each letter telling a story of its own. She could sense the weight of his words, the years of regret etched into that ink. Tom nodded. "After I realized that running away from my feelings was hurting me and everyone I cared about." Her heart softened slightly. It's about you, about us," he said earnestly. I'm trying to face everything, my fears, my mistakes. A flicker of hope ignited within her, battling against the hurt that clung to her like a shadow. He took a cautious step closer, empathy shining in his eyes. I understand, but I want to show you that I can change, that I can be better. You deserve that. The anxiety crept back into her voice. Tom's gaze bore into hers. I won't let that happen this time. I swear I've learned my lesson. For a moment, Sarah remained silent, wrestling with the conflicting emotions swirling within her. She felt the warmth of his sincerity, the truth behind his words, but the risk of opening her heart again loomed large. She asked, finally, her voice trembling. Just give us a chance, he replied. Start with coffee, meet me tomorrow. As he stepped back slightly, the rain seemed to soften, and for the first time in a long while, Sarah considered the possibility. Okay. One coffee, she acquiesced, the words surprising even her. A grin broke across Tom's face, relief washing over him. Thank you, make sure you don't, she warned, feeling a cautious sense of hope stir within her. I won't, he promised. The next day rolled around slowly, anxiety knitting itself into Sarah's stomach as she prepared for their meeting. The cafe was bright and inviting, filled with the comforting aroma of fresh coffee. As she entered, her heart pounded hard enough that she could feel it echoing in her ears. Would he show? When she spotted him sitting near a window, her breath caught in her throat. Tom looked different still him, yet transformed. His demeanor was softer, almost vulnerable as he waved her over. Hey, she said, trying to mask her jitters. Hey, you look great, he replied, genuine admiration gleaming in his eyes. Thanks, she replied, choosing to focus on the coffee menu rather than risk delving into deeper subjects right away. They ordered their drinks, sharing shy smiles across the table as they settled into the rhythm of their conversation. It felt natural, like slipping back into a comfortable sweater, a contrast to the stormy night that had brought them here. He asked, breaking the silence that had stretched between them. I thought it was a nice touch, she replied, choosing her words carefully. It is, he said, fingers grazing the tattoo nearly absent-mindedly. It reminds me that I can't forget my past, but I can't let it define me either. Sarah nodded, empathy washing over her. And I want to move forward with you, he added, his voice steady. She asked, the worry creeping back into her voice. Tom shook his head. No, but we can learn from it. As she looked at him, something shifted in her heart. She felt a small spark ignite, as if allowing herself to believe that maybe they could rebuild what had been lost. Okay, she said slowly, trying to grasp the weight of her decision. But it won't be easy. I will, he promised, sincerity etched into every word. Minutes turned into hours, filled with laughter, warmth, and a sense of old friends reconnecting. They shared stories, piecing their lives together again, and with each story, the weight of the past lightened just a bit more. Sarah asked playfully, her curiosity piqued. Honestly, he grinned, a hint of mischief in his eyes, a reminder to always face my fears. She laughed, realizing how much she missed this side of him, the playfulness and lightness that had once filled their time together. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, painting the cafe in warm hues, Sarah felt a shift within her. This afternoon felt like a turning point, opening the door to new possibilities. She could see it in Tom's eyes, too, a determination to change, to grow. And amidst the lightness, a realization began to take shape. Maybe they could find their way back to something beautiful. Let's not do this again, she said suddenly, her voice steady. Tom's gaze locked with hers, a serious understanding unfolding. Agreed. Days turned into weeks, and they began to carve out a new routine, one filled with shared laughter and intimate moments. The remnants of their fractured past hung in the background, but they both resolved to confront them rather than let them shadow their future. One evening, after a dinner date filled with warmth and meaningful conversation, Sarah found herself sitting on Tom's couch, the weight of vulnerability settling between them. She said, her heart racing. Of course, he replied, looking genuinely curious. About the tattoo, she began, glancing down at his wrist. You said it was a reminder of everything you've lost. Tom hesitated, his expression shifting as if pulling memories from deep within. It's not just about loss. Sarah absorbed his words, feeling the depth behind them. He paused, a thoughtful frown forming. I feel freer. I'm not saying everything is perfect, but I feel like we're building something real again. Relief washed over her at his honesty, but something also nagged at her anxiety laced with the fear of losing him once again. It won't, he replied firmly, determination in his voice. We'll face it together. The look in his eyes made her heart swell with hope. And as they sat together, the room illuminated by the soft glow of the lamp, Sarah took a deep breath and allowed herself to embrace the feelings budding again between them. In the weeks that followed, their connection deepened, a fragile bloom pushing through cracks of past pain. Each date, each laugh shared became a testament to their willingness to face uncertainty together. But then one evening, as they strolled through a park under twinkling lights, Tom briefly dropped his hand to reach into his pocket, and Sarah caught sight of the tattoo once more, each letter a reminder of struggle, growth, and redemption. Sometimes I think I'm still scared, she confessed, her voice soft against the night air. Sorry, it's okay to be scared, he said, brushing his fingers against hers. Growth isn't a straight line, it's messy and imperfect. She looked over at him, realizing just how much he had evolved. Thank you for allowing me back in, he replied with a genuine smile. As they continued walking, Sarah felt the warmth of his presence beside her, the shadows of their past slowly fading. They could weather whatever came their way together, anchored by the understanding that fear was merely a part of the journey. And as the stars began to peek out from behind the clouds, she knew they were just getting started, two hearts intertwined, ready to embrace whatever new adventures lay ahead, tattooed promises of love leading the way. The chill in the air wrapped around her like a cold blanket as Emily stood alone on the balcony, staring out at the city skyline. It had been weeks since everything had shattered, weeks since Jake had walked out, leaving her with nothing but questions and a heart heavier than she thought possible. She held a half-empty glass of wine, the crimson liquid swirling inside like the storm of emotions churning within her. Suddenly, she heard the sound of footsteps behind her. Heart pounding, she turned to see him, Jake, soaked from the rain, looking hesitant yet determined. "Emily," he called softly, his voice barely above a whisper, almost drowned out by the sound of raindrops hitting the pavement below. She asked, trying to sound braver than she felt. She kept the balcony railing firmly in her grip as if it could anchor her to reality. "I came to apologize," he said, stepping forward, hair plastered to his forehead. But it wasn't just his appearance that struck her. It was the vulnerability in his eyes, a raw openness she hadn't seen in a long time. "I know I messed up," the anger bubbled to the surface. "Explain. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness," he said, voice shaking slightly. "But I need you to hear me out." She thought about how many sleepless nights she had spent wondering what went wrong. He took a deep breath, clearly weighing his words. "I thought I was protecting myself. I thought if I pushed you away, it would keep you safe." She pressed, frustration creeping into her voice. "Safe from my past," he admitted, looking down at his feet as if he were ashamed. "Jake, you don't get to decide who I can be with," she replied, her heart racing. "It's not that simple," he said, stepping closer. The rain drizzled down, catching the light and creating a softly surreal backdrop. He hesitated, the weight of his past visibly settling in. "When I was younger, I made a lot of mistakes. Bad choices, I lost people because of them." Emily's heart softened just a little, but it wasn't enough to bridge the chasm between them. "I thought it was the only option," he replied, his voice earnest. "But I see now that it was wrong. I'm here to tell you that I'm sorry." As he spoke, she could feel the authentic emotion in his voice, yet the scars of their past still ached in her chest. "Saying you're sorry doesn't fix everything," she said, her voice wavering. "I know that, but I want to do better." "I want a second chance," he said, desperation lacing his words. She searched his face for signs of sincerity, searching for a flicker of hope in his pleading gaze. She asked, intrigued despite herself. "It's a reminder," he said, his voice growing softer, "a reminder of my past mistakes and the people I've lost." Emily studied the tattoo, each letter telling a story. He nodded slowly. "Yes, it was a wake-up call. I realized I was living in fear, and I didn't want to do that anymore." As the rain poured down, silence enveloped them. The tattoo symbolized something deeper for both of them, a battle with fear, a confrontation with love and loss. She felt a flicker of something, a connection forming once more. She finally asked, "More than anything," he replied, looking directly into her eyes. "I'll prove it to you, just give me a chance." Emily closed her eyes, her heart racing. It was terrifying to even imagine opening herself up to him again. "Then we'll navigate that together," Jake said, determination flooding his voice. A warmth spread through her, and for the first time in weeks she began to feel hope. "Okay," she whispered. "It will," he promised, his sincerity echoing in the rainy air. Later that week they met again, the sun shining through the clouds, casting a warm glow over the city. They walked through the park, sharing light conversations, the tension easing with each passing moment. Jake seemed more relaxed, and for the first time in a long while Emily felt herself smiling genuinely. Yet beneath it all, she sensed that both of them were still grappling with old wounds. Emily hesitated, shifting nervously on the park bench. "Of course," he replied, flashing her a reassuring smile. Her fingers traced the outline of her own wrist, feeling an invisible boundary separating them still. "It was a moment of clarity," he said, his gaze becoming distant. "After everything that happened, I realized that running away from my feelings only pushed me deeper into darkness." She asked, her heart pounding in her chest. "I want to live fully, love fully, to be present in every moment with you," he replied, his voice steady. Emily's heart fluttered at his words, a combination of hope and anxiety washing over her. "I want that too," she admitted. "Fear has held both of us hostage," Jake said, leaning closer, "but together we can try to break those chains." The sincerity in his voice spoke volumes, weaving hope into her heart. Perhaps they could create something beautiful in spite of the past. Their connection began to feel more tangible, a thread drawing them together despite the darkness lingering around them. As they walked hand in hand, Emily felt the warmth of his touch and the thrill that surged through her. Maybe healing could happen, maybe love was worth fighting for again. Days turned into weeks, filled with a blend of laughter and deep conversations. They explored the city together, shared secrets beneath the stars, and rekindled fragments of joy that had been buried beneath layers of hurt. But still, the memory of their fight lingered, a shadow that followed their every step. One night, as they sat on a rooftop, gazing at the city lights, the serenity was broken by that familiar tension. Emily finally blurted out, feeling the need to voice her fear. "Trust me, Emily," Jake said, taking her hand in his. "I'm not that guy anymore." "I just don't want to get hurt again," she confessed, feelings spilling forth. Jake paused, the weight of her words hanging heavy between them. "I don't want to hurt you either, but we can be open about this." "You're right," Emily admitted, her heart pounding in her chest. "And I want to be honest about my mistakes," he promised. The chill of the night seeped into the air, but there was warmth radiating between them, a shared understanding blossoming that felt more solid every time they acknowledged their fears. The vulnerability was cleansing. As weeks melted into months, they began to solidify their relationship, rebuilding trust brick by brick. It wasn't easy, and they faced challenges that sometimes brought them to the brink. But they fought for each other, used laughter as a shield against the darkness, and held tightly to their newfound connection. Each evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Emily would study Jake's tattoo, a reminder of not only his past mistakes but also of the present they were forging together. She could quietly feel that every letter represented a story, a symbol of resilience that echoed in her heart. One sunny afternoon, while they were sprawled out on a blanket at the park, Emily turned to him with newfound resolve. "I think we're ready for something more," she said, lacing her fingers through his. He asked, his eyes widening in surprise. "I want to talk about moving forward," she replied, feeling the courage swell inside her. "I want to commit to this, to us." Jake's eyes shone with a mix of surprise and joy. "Are you sure?" "I am," she said firmly, her heart racing with anticipation. With tears brimming in his eyes, he lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss against her palm. The tender moment felt monumental, like taking the first step toward a lifelong journey. Strengthened by the lessons of their past, they both recognized how far they had come, a monumental leap from heartbreak to healing. Days turned into weeks, filled with small joys and shared laughter as they began crafting their unique love story. Each experience, each touch, each word exchanged became part of the delicate fabric of their lives woven together. They knew challenges still loomed ahead, but they armed themselves with the resolve to face them. They would not slip back into the shadows. They refused to let fear dictate their choices any longer. One evening, as they sat beneath a shower of stars, Emily felt the weight of their journey settle comfortably in her heart. "I'm grateful for your tattoo," she finally said, glancing sideways at Jake. He asked, a smile breaking across his face. "Yes," she replied earnestly. Seeing the astonishment in his eyes made her heart swell. "Absolutely," he agreed, his gaze steady and firm, the vulnerability still present but eclipsed by resolve. "We've fought our battles and we're still here." In that moment, Emily realized just how much they had both gained, both separately and together. They had embraced vulnerability and transformed fear into strength. Love was not the absence of struggle. Love was the willingness to face that struggle together. As they shared a lingering kiss, the stars twinkled above them, a beautiful, silent witness to their journey of love, and in her heart, Emily knew they were now poised for whatever came next. A future filled with laughter, adventure, and the courage to face life together, hand in hand, with hearts fully exposed. And nestled deep within her, the tattoo on his wrist stood as a testament, a promise of love, growth, and unbreakable bonds. The sound of thunder rumbled in the distance, and as the storm rolled in, Lily sat on her couch, wrapped tightly in her blanket. Her thoughts were tangled, replaying the events of the last few weeks like a film on a loop. She couldn't shake the memory of the last time she saw Jake, the way he had stormed out, leaving her feeling cold and abandoned. The doorbell chimed unexpectedly, jarring her from her reverie. It cut through the darkness of her thoughts, and a flicker of hope sparked. Maybe it was him. But she quickly snuffed that thought out, pulling her blanket tighter. "Get a grip, Lily," she whispered to herself. The doorbell rang again, insistent and impatient. Heart pounding, she forced herself to her feet and walked to the door. Peeking through the peephole, she was met with a familiar sight: Jake, drenched from the pouring rain, standing there looking small and vulnerable. In that moment, she felt a rush of emotions collide inside her: love, anger, confusion. Taking a deep breath, she swung the door open, balancing the weight of her feelings like a tightrope walker. "Jake," she said, her heart throbbing painfully in her chest. "Lily," he replied, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation, his eyes searching hers intently. "About what? I thought we were done talking," she snapped, folding her arms tightly across her chest, even more defensive now that he was so close. He ran a hand through his wet hair, clearly agitated. "I know I messed up. Kept telling myself that pushing you away was the right thing to do, that it would keep you safe." A flash of anger surged through her. Safe from what exactly? He hesitated, looking down at his feet as if the heaviness of what he was carrying was too much to hold. "Safe from the truth," he said quietly. She pressed, curiosity mixing with frustration. "That I'm broken, Lily, that I've made mistakes that haunt me every day." Tears stung at the corners of her eyes. "You think that explains everything?" "Believe me, I know, and that's why I'm here," he said, taking a step closer. "I'm sorry. No more excuses, Jake," she replied, shaking her head. "There are things you don't know about my past," he said, "things I didn't want to bring into our lives." Her heart raced, torn between anger and intrigue. "What do you mean?" He paused, a moment of silence stretching between them, heavy with unspoken words. "When I was a kid, I lost my brother." He made a lot of bad choices, got involved with people who were dangerous. I tried to save him, but I failed. Emily felt a chill run down her spine as she listened. I thought I was being brave, he admitted, frustration spilling over. But now I see how cowardly it was. I hurt you. I didn't think about how lonely I would make you feel. Tears threatened to spill over as his words hit home. So now you're sorry? No, I know it's not, but it's genuine. I'm here to take responsibility, he said. She searched his eyes, trying to find the sincerity behind them. Lily asked, shocked by the sight. It's my reminder, he said, voice steady. A constant reminder to embrace life, to take risks, and never to take anything for granted. Lily took a step back, absorbing the words as they sank in. I did, he said softly. I want you to understand that I'm not just apologizing to you, I'm confronting my past. For a moment, they both stood in silence, the tension of the storm outside echoing the tumult in Lily's heart. She felt the weight of his honesty, and a flicker of hope ignited inside her. Yes, he replied, stepping forward again. Change doesn't happen overnight, Jake, she said, tears shimmering in her eyes. Lily watched as he nodded, determination in his gaze. Against the backdrop of thunder and pouring rain, she found a semblance of warmth in his presence. Okay, she whispered, her voice trembling. We can talk. I understand, he promised, sincerity flooding his voice. That was how their dialogue began anew, tangled with uncertainty and glimmers of hope, the storm outside echoing the turmoil within them. They spent hours on the couch, pouring out their hearts, all the things left unsaid spilling into the air as the thunder continued to rumble. Days turned into weeks, and time became a tangled web of emotions as they cautiously began to rebuild their relationship. Each evening, they would sit together, navigating their way through past hurts while basking in the warmth of shared laughter. With every new moment, the wounds between them began to heal, yet lurking beneath the surface were old fears, the ever-present what-ifs that threatened to pull them apart once more. One afternoon, as the sun broke through the clouds, they walked through the park, the vibrant colors of spring painting the world around them. Lily felt lighter, the fresh air filled her lungs with hope, and she began to believe that maybe, just maybe, they could find their way back. She asked casually, glancing over at him. Jake chuckled softly. Oh, definitely, she teased, nudging him playfully. Maybe a tree, he replied, a broad grin spreading across his face. That sounds perfect for you, Lily said, smiling back, her heart warming in response to his enthusiasm. But as they continued walking, memories of the things he had done pelted her mind, bittersweet like raindrops falling from a tree. She asked, concern threading through her voice. Jake stopped, turning to face her, his expression shifting to something serious. Lily, we've both been through so much already, but facing it together is what makes us stronger. I believe in us. As they gazed into each other's eyes, a quiet understanding blossomed between them. Slowly, their fingers intertwining, they continued walking, the shadows of the past no longer looming over them as heavily. One evening, while having dinner together, Jake took a deep breath, looking slightly nervous. Of course, she said, sensing the weight behind his words. Part of the reason I got that tattoo was to remind myself not to let fear guide my decisions, he confessed. But another part of me wanted to show it to you. I want you to know that I'm committed to being here. Tears prickled the corners of her eyes at the intimacy of his confession. You mean a lot to me, he replied, determination etched on his face. That night, as they snuggled on the couch, the warmth of familiarity washed over them. He knew they were both still a work in progress, yet they were forging toward a brighter future together, a future built on honesty and understanding. Their days rolled past in a blur of laughter and deep talks, each moment etched with the essence of forgiveness. They created new memories, ones layered with joy and excitement. Though the storm clouds from their past hovered in the background, their resolve became stronger. And one evening, as they huddled closely on the couch, Jake turned to her with a serious expression. Her heart raced at the implication of his words. Let's commit to being together, no more hiding from challenges or from the past. I want to face it all with you, he said, sincerity etched in every word. She asked, feeling the thrill of the moment. I am, he promised, eyes sparkling with hope. You're the one I want to be with. With tears of joy spilling onto her cheeks, she nodded. They both smiled, their hearts filling with the joy of embarking on a new chapter together. And as they held each other close, Lily caught a glimpse of the tattoo on Jake's wrist, the words, never forget, shining like a beacon. In that moment, she knew they had faced the storm and emerged stronger together, a new beginning forged from love, resilience, and the courage to forgive. Together, they would create a future illuminated by the choices they made, facing whatever life threw their way, hand in hand. The warmth of hope enveloped them like a cherished embrace, the promise of tomorrow unfolding beneath the vast, beautiful sky. The storm raged outside, lightning illuminating the darkened city as Emma stared at the phone in her hand. It was an unfamiliar number, and on the other end, she was sure she would find an apology wrapped in regret. She hesitated, but finally pressed the green button. Hey, it's me, Jake said, his voice cutting through the static like a knife. Jake, she breathed, her heart fluttering, a whirlwind of emotions bubbling to the surface. Can we talk? The plea in his voice pulled at her heartstrings, igniting old wounds. Talk about what? I didn't run away because I wanted to hurt you, he replied, desperation lacing every syllable. I was scared. Scared of what? Because I sure wasn't scared of you, Emma shrugged, trying to hide the tremor in her voice. I was scared of losing you, he confessed, each word tumbling out like a confession. The words hung heavy in the air, filled with a complexity she wasn't sure she wanted to untangle. Your past, is that a joke? Let me explain, please, he urged. I messed up. I thought closing myself off would keep you safe, but it only made it worse. Her heart pounded in her chest, caught between anger and the flicker of hope. Because I care about you, Emma. As she felt the familiar rush of emotions, she hesitated. A crack of thunder boomed in the background, mirroring the turmoil brewing within her. I can show you I can change, Jake replied, his voice firm now. Just then, a flash of lightning lit up the room, and for a moment Emma caught a glimpse of vulnerability in his expression. She demanded, unable to mask her hurt. I'll prove it to you, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Just give me a chance. Their conversation spiraled into silence, the storm creating an electric tension between them. I'll think about it, Emma said finally, her voice steady but her heart uncertain. Just meet me tomorrow. Jake pressed. Okay, she said, and as she hung up, the weight of the world sat heavy on her shoulders. The next day they met at a small cafe tucked away from the bustling city. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the warm air, but Emma felt the tension in her chest. She glanced around, feeling hyper-aware of everything. Jake arrived, looking nervously at his shoes before lifting his gaze to meet hers. Thank you for coming, he said, his voice steady but tinged with apprehension. Go ahead, she said, crossing her arms, instinctively shielding her heart. I know I hurt you, I know I didn't think, he began, his gaze unwavering. But I want to learn from my mistakes, she replied, feeling angry again. Better at lying. I didn't mean to lie, Emma, I just didn't know how to handle my past. I thought if I distanced myself, I could protect us both, he admitted, his voice cracking with emotion. The sincerity in his eyes made her pause. Do you even understand what you put me through? I know, he replied earnestly. The words hung between them, and for a moment she felt a flicker of hope. And what do you plan to prove? A hint of frustration flashed across his face, but he forced it down. You'll see I care, Emma echoed. Jake hesitated, and then he rolled up his sleeve to reveal a tattoo winding around his wrist. This, he said, his voice steady. She leaned in, curiously eyeing the tattoo, an intricate design with the words "Live for Today" elegantly scripted beneath it. It means I've learned to embrace every moment. I got it as a reminder that life is short and unpredictable. I want to focus on what matters, Jake explained, genuine passion radiating from him. Emma challenged, skepticism etched on her features. Not just the tattoo, he said, looking at her intensely. This symbolizes a choice I made to confront my past instead of running from it. It reminds me that I don't want to lose anyone else. Emma took a deep breath, trying to process his words. This is all so sudden. I know it's a journey. I'm not asking for blind faith, but I promise you every day I'll show you that I'm serious about this, he replied, his tone unwavering. Silence stretched between them, thick with uncertainty. She said, feeling vulnerable. Exactly, he replied, relief washing over his features. As they continued to talk, a fragile hope began to creep in. The sun shone softly through the cafe windows, illuminating the path ahead. They discussed their dreams, their fears, and slowly but surely their walls began to crumble. Days turned into weeks, and as they cautiously navigated their relationship, Emma started to see glimpses of the man Jake wanted to be. He was there, investing time and effort into rebuilding trust. They explored the city together, shared laughter, and even supported each other through their respective struggles. Each step they took felt new and fragile, but also beautiful. But lurking in the background were the shadows of doubt. On more than one occasion, Emma found herself second-guessing whether forgiving him was truly the right choice. Late at night, while lying awake, she would ponder their past, her fears wrapping around her like a cold blanket. One evening, as they strolled through a park, Jake's fingers lightly grazed her arm. The warmth from his touch sent a jolt of electricity through her. He asked suddenly, his voice low. Sometimes, she admitted, reflecting on the promise it held. I do, he admitted, pausing to process his own thoughts, but facing those doubts is part of being honest with myself, by choosing to confront them instead of avoiding them. Like how I'm choosing to be here with you right now, he said, his voice steady. She asked. It does, he replied. As the leaves rustled in the wind, Emma felt a warmth bloom in her chest. The connection between them deepened as they talked openly about their pasts, vulnerabilities becoming stepping stones rather than pitfalls. Yet the shadows still lingered, and as they continued to walk, Emma suddenly felt the weight of her fears seep through the cracks of hope they had built together. Jake, what if it's all just a facade? He sighed, stopping in his tracks, turning to face her. There's a chance we could falter, but I know now that the past doesn't define us. Her heart raced. The thought of falling back into old patterns terrified her, but the determination in his expression sparked something inside her. You seem so different now, Jake. You should believe in us, he insisted, his voice rich with sincerity. As she gazed into his eyes, a seed of hope began to take root within her. Perhaps they were on the right path, but only time would tell. They were both still navigating the complexities of their journey. Weeks began to flow seamlessly, filled with moments of joy that overshadowed the remnants of pain. Each evening, as they fell into each other's arms, Emma discovered they were unraveling the layers of their relationship, thread by thread. But late one night, as they sat on the floor sharing stories, she noticed Jake's tattoo again. She asked, feeling brave enough to dig deeper. It means to seize every moment, to embrace the good and the bad. It means recognizing that we're not perfect, but we're here right now. I can't let fear guide me anymore, he said, his eyes gleaming with passion. Tears brimmed in her eyes as she felt his genuineness wash over her. I want to try to live for today with you, she said softly. You will, he replied, wrapping her in a comforting embrace, the warmth surrounding both of them. And just like that, with each passing day, Emma learned to trust again. Together, they faced life's challenges hand in hand, forging a new path filled with laughter, love, and hope. But shadows still surfaced occasionally, and one chilly night, memories of their past pulled at her heart like a tide. Sitting on the edge of her bed, she felt uncertain. What if Jake slipped back into old habits? What if things didn't work out? Jake sensed her turmoil and knelt beside her, his hand resting gently on her knee. He asked, concern etched on his face. I don't want to lose this again, she admitted, her voice thick with emotion. I'm scared too, he confessed, his vulnerability shining through, but I believe in us now and always. As he took her hand, the tattoo on his wrist glimmered in the dim light of the room. It was a reminder of the journey they had traveled together, filled with struggles but also with resilience. Life is unpredictable, but that's what makes it beautiful. With his words wrapping around her like a warm blanket, Emma felt hope rekindle inside her. You're right, she said, her voice steady. The weeks turned into months, and as they continued to navigate life, their love blossomed like spring flowers breaking through the frost. Each conversation became a building block, solidifying their bond and weaving a tapestry of hope. One night, as they lay beneath the stars, Emma turned to Jake, looking at the tattoo that had become so significant in their journey. Thank you for making me believe again, she said softly. Thank you for trusting me, he replied, his smile warm and sincere. Together, under the vast, starlit sky, they shared their hopes and dreams, and in that moment they realized that love was about more than just words. It was about being willing to rise again and again in the face of uncertainty. And in that journey, the tattoo on Jake's wrist stood as a testament to their growth, a symbol of courage, love, and the promise that together, they'd learn to embrace each day one heartbeat at a time. It was a late afternoon when the doorbell rang at Sarah's apartment. The sound jolted her from her thoughts, and she felt her heart race. It had been months since she last saw Jake, the man who had turned her world upside down and left her with nothing but questions. She stood frozen for a moment, anxiety coiling inside her. What if it was him? What if he came to apologize? Taking a deep breath, she opened the door and there he stood. Jake. He looked different, rain-soaked and weary, eyes filled with a mixture of vulnerability and determination. Sarah, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. She asked, her voice shaking slightly. I need to talk to you, he replied, stepping closer as he searched her face for something. Talk. She folded her arms, creating a barrier around her heart. I know I messed up. I've been thinking about it every day, he said, frustration bleeding into his tone. I'm sorry for how I handled things. I just scared. You left me in the dark, Jake, she snapped, emotions rising like a tide. I know, and I regret it, he said, lowering his gaze. Her heart softened for just a moment, but the memories of their fight flooded back and the anger returned. So what do you want me to do? No, he said, shaking his head. I want to show you that I can be better. The rain started pouring harder, pattering against the window as Sarah considered his words. Because I care about you, he said, his voice steadying. I've realized that I can't hide anymore. She pressed. I want to be honest. I don't want to hide from my past anymore, he said, reaching for her hand but stopping short, sensing her hesitation. Please, Sarah. She tried to mask the flicker of curiosity that ignited within her. She asked, genuinely baffled, because it took losing you for me to understand just how much you mean to me, he replied, his voice thick with emotion. He paused, uncertainty clouding his expression. Then he rolled back his sleeve, revealing a tattoo etched across his forearm. Got this, he said. She asked, her curiosity piqued as she stepped a little closer. It's a reminder, he explained, his voice quiet but powerful. It's about accepting the struggles I've faced and learning from them. She examined the tattoo, feeling an unexpected wave of empathy wash over her. Each letter seemed to pulse with meaning. Yes, he said, urgency in his voice. It's not just about the tattoo, he replied earnestly. It's about acknowledging my mistakes and wanting to correct them. I can't keep running anymore. As the rain beat against the window, the warmth between them began to thaw the frigid tension that had settled around her heart, but doubt still clung to her. I understand, he said, the sincerity in his voice unwavering. A flicker of hope ignited inside her, an ember of something she thought was lost forever. The memories of their good times battled against the pain of their last moments together. By giving me a chance, Jake replied. Let's start slow. Just talk, no pressure. Sarah hesitated, feeling the weight of everything they had been through. The idea of opening her heart again terrified her, but she also couldn't shake the feeling that perhaps he had truly changed. Okay, she said finally. Agreed, he said, the relief evident in his features. That evening they sat across from each other at her kitchen table. conversations floating around them like leaves caught in a gentle breeze. Jake was earnest in his attempts to connect, sharing pieces of his life she had never known, the struggles, the fears, and the regrets. But as they moved deeper into the conversation, a delicate tension lingered in the air, reminding them of the raw emotions lurking just beneath the surface. "I'm still scared," Sarah confessed, her voice trembling slightly. "I'm scared too," Jake admitted, the vulnerability in his eyes reflecting her own. "But that's why we need to face this together." The sincerity in his voice enveloped her, and she felt a pinprick of hope struggle to break free. "Promise me you'll never leave again," she said, almost as a whisper. "I promise," he responded without hesitation. Days passed, and slowly they began to breathe life back into their relationship. Each day became a separate challenge, beginning as mere conversation and sometimes ending in laughter, building a fragile foundation brick by brick. But the reminders of their past still haunted the edges of her thoughts, lurking like shadows. One evening as they sat on the couch sharing stories, Jake's tattoo caught her eye. She asked, feeling the need to bridge the gap. "Every day," he said, glancing down at it. She probed gently, wanting to dive deeper. "They whisper lies about worthlessness," he admitted. "But I'm learning to reject them." "I felt that too," she confessed, swallowing the lump in her throat, feelings spilling over like water from a cup too full. "Then we're both learning," he said, a smile creeping onto his face. Yet weeks later, a quiet, dark day approached. Sarah felt an unease that hung in the air like fog. She found herself staring at Jake as they sat on the couch, joy still flickering between them, yet shadows loomed in the back of her mind. She asked suddenly, jolting the moment into heavy tension. Jake replied, concern rising in his voice. "What if we're both still stuck in patterns from the past?" she said, her words spilling out in a rush. "Sarah, every relationship has its challenges," he argued gently. "I believe in us," he declared, leaning closer, his hand brushing against hers. The conviction in his voice sent shivers down her spine, but doubt still whispered in her mind. "I want to believe that," she said, feeling vulnerable. For a moment they sat in silence, the air thick with uncertainty. Just then Jake caught sight of his tattoo again. "This tattoo isn't just a reminder of my past, it's also a commitment to our future," he said with conviction. A sudden wave of emotion rushed over her, and she felt tears prick her eyes. "I'm terrified of being left again," she admitted, her heart racing. "I'll never leave you," he pledged, his voice steady. As dusk began to settle, they leaned back, somewhat immersed in their thoughts. Just then Jake pulled out his phone, text messages lighting up the screen. Sarah asked curiously, "It's my sister. She's been going through a rough patch," he replied, looking slightly distracted. "Okay," she said tentatively. Minutes ticked by, the atmosphere shifting from warmth to a cold uncertainty. Jake's fingers danced over the screen, his expression shifting as he read. She asked, sensing that something felt off. "Yeah, just a lot to deal with," he said, running a hand through his hair. Sarah pressed, heart racing at the thought of uncertainty creeping back in. He nodded, though his eyes darted to the screen. "I'll handle it." But in that moment, shadows whispered louder and doubt clawed at Sarah's heart. "I need you to be present with me. I can't handle feeling alone in this," she said urgently. He snapped unexpectedly, frustration spilling over. Caught off guard, Sarah recoiled slightly. "I just want to make sure our connection is strong," she said softly. Jake took a breath, clearly struggling to rein in his emotions. "I'm trying, but everything is overwhelming right now," he confessed, his anger dissolving into vulnerability. The room grew silent, tension crackling in the air. As Sarah glanced at his forearm, the tattoo now feeling like an echo of their conversation, she couldn't help but feel the weight of his words. As if sensing her turmoil, he slowly pulled up his sleeve and showed her the tattoo again. "This is not just skin deep," he said, voice low. "It represents everything I've faced to be here, every moment, every struggle." The sincerity in his voice brought tears to her eyes, but the underlying tension still loomed. "I can't keep fighting this battle alone, Jake," she said finally, emotions spilling over. "No, you won't have to," he said, resolve hardening in his tone. "I promise I'm not going anywhere." But just as Sarah opened her mouth to reassure him, her phone buzzed with a notification. She glanced at it, and her heartbeat quickened a familiar name. Jake asked, watching her intently. "It's just a reminder of the past," she stammered, feeling conflicted. A flicker of doubt crossed Jake's face. "I don't know." Her voice trembled. As the air grew heavier with tension, Jake's expression hardened. "Sometimes confronting the past means leaving it there," she challenged, desperation in her voice. He pressed, anxiety creeping into his tone. In that moment, the weight of everything, the tattoo, the past, the uncertainties, they all crashed down around her, swirling together like a storm. As they stared into each other's eyes, the silence became deafening, lingering threats of unresolved wounds hanging heavy in the air, echoing the battles they both faced. And as Emma struggled with the decision looming before her, she realized that everything could change in an instant. Little did she know, the truth about that tattoo would soon push her to her limits, testing their bond, bringing forth the very fears they had been trying to flee. Would she take that leap into the past or choke on fears anew? It was a turning point, a moment that could alter their lives forever.